We did not notice the humans at first. That was our first mistake. In a war where entire civilizations burned in measured silence, where fleets collided like collapsing stars, and where extinction could be calculated to the decimal, nothing was supposed to escape our awareness. We are the observers. We do not miss things. And yet, we missed them. The conflict had already consumed 3 star systems by the time Sector Varnus 9 entered our records, a barren region, strategically insignificant, orbiting a dim and dying star. It was the kind of place wars passed through, not fought over. And yet, it became something else. Our sensors mapped everything, every particle disturbance, every engine signature, every fluctuation in thermal output. The void itself was a canvas, and we read it perfectly. Nothing escaped us. Nothing except what happened there. The humans had deployed a reconnaissance squad into Varnus 9, 8 individuals, biological, fragile, short-lived. Their technology, while inventive, was considered inefficient by our standards. Their bodies required oxygen, rest, sustenance, limitations that most evolved species had long surpassed. We calculated their survival probability at 0.03%. It was not cruelty, it was mathematics. Their mission parameters were simple: infiltrate Karthik's-controlled territory, gather intelligence, and transmit findings before inevitable termination. The Karthik's dominion did not tolerate intrusion. They did not capture prisoners. They erased them. We expected a brief signal burst, a flicker of data, then silence. Instead, we received nothing at all, not even silence. At first, we did not understand the difference. Sector Varnus 9 did not go dark the way battlefields typically do. There were no energy spikes, no radiation blooms, no debris fields drifting in the aftermath of violence. It simply ceased. Imagine a star blinking out without collapse. Imagine existence itself pausing, just for a moment. That is what our instruments recorded.
Or rather, what they failed to record. We recalibrated our sensors, then recalibrated again. We dispatched autonomous probes, hundreds of them, each equipped with redundant systems designed to resist interference from even the most hostile environments. None returned data. None returned at all. It was as if the sector rejected observation, as if reality itself had become unwilling to be seen. That was when we noticed the second anomaly, the Karthik's outpost. 12,000 soldiers, hardened, adapted, bred for war across generations. Their presence alone should have generated enough thermal and kinetic signatures to illuminate the region like a beacon. There was nothing. No life signs, no remains, no indication they had ever existed. Not destroyed, not evacuated. Gone. This was impossible. Even in total annihilation, something remains. Energy disperses. Matter leaves echoes. The universe does not allow complete absence. And yet, in Varnus 9, absence was all that remained. Our high command categorized it as a sensor malfunction, a localized anomaly, possibly a cloaking phenomenon beyond current understanding. But I, Archivist Terrell Kuhn, was not convinced. Because absence, when it is perfect, is not natural. It is intentional. And intention implies something far more dangerous than chaos. We expanded our observation range, cross-referenced long-range scans from adjacent sectors, monitored subspace fluctuations, searched for any distortion that might explain what we were seeing. Or rather, what we were not seeing. Time passed. Too much time. War does not pause for mysteries. Entire fleets were lost while we analyzed empty space. And then, it happened. A signal. Weak, fragmented, barely distinguishable from background radiation. But it was there. Human origin. We isolated it carefully, filtering through layers of interference that should not have existed. The transmission was broken, as though something had attempted to erase it. Not destroy, but suppress.
We reconstructed what we could. The audio was distorted, Frequencies stretched beyond normal parameters, but within the static, there was a voice, human, breathing, alive. We are not alone here. The message ended abruptly, not cut, not disrupted, ended, as though whatever came next was not meant to be heard. For several cycles, no one spoke. Not in the command chambers, not among the observers, not even within the automated systems that processed data beyond our comprehension. We had witnessed civilizations collapse. We had recorded the final moments of species that believed themselves eternal. We had never hesitated. But this was different. Because the humans were not supposed to survive. They were not supposed to adapt. And they were certainly not supposed to encounter something that could erase an entire Carthix outpost without a trace. Yet the evidence, what little of it remained, pointed to only one conclusion. Something was in Varnix 9, something that did not obey the laws we understood, something that even the Carthix could not fight. And somehow, the humans had found it first. In that moment, I experienced something I had never recorded in all my cycles of observation. Not curiosity, not concern, but uncertainty. A fracture in the certainty that defined our existence. And from that fracture, something colder emerged. A realization that settled deep within my consciousness, refusing to be dismissed. We had not lost sight of the humans. They had moved beyond our sight. And if that were true, then whatever waited in the silence of Varnix 9 was not finished. The Carthix dominion does not retreat. This is not an assumption. It is not a cultural interpretation. It is a recorded constant. Across 812 documented conflicts, spanning environments from irradiated wastelands to oceanic abyssal trenches, the Carthix have demonstrated only two outcomes: advance or die. They do not withdraw. They do not surrender. They do not vanish.
And yet, in Sector Varnus 9, they did all three. This contradiction alone should have halted the war. It did not. High Command reviewed the data, what little of it existed, and rendered their judgment with cold efficiency. Localized anomaly, possible experimental weapon, low strategic priority. In simpler terms, irrelevant. They moved on. I could not. I am Archivist Teral Kuhn of the 5th Observation Fleet. I do not command ships. I do not lead soldiers. I observe, record, and interpret. Where others see conclusions, I see fractures, places where understanding fails. And Varnus 9 was not a fracture. It was a void, a perfect absence where knowledge should exist. That is not something one ignores. I requested extended observation clearance. Denied. I submitted a revised analysis highlighting inconsistencies in Carthix behavioral patterns. Ignored. So I did what all true observers eventually must. I continued without permission. We redeployed probes, smaller this time, quieter, stripped of non-essential systems. If something in Varnus 9 resisted observation, then we would become less observable. It did not matter. One by one, they crossed the threshold into the sector, and one by one, they ceased. No signal degradation, no interference spike, no final transmission. They simply stopped existing within our awareness. We attempted real-time tracking, quantum link telemetry designed to function beyond conventional space. The links did not break. They remained active, but they returned nothing, not even zero, just nothing. It is difficult to explain this to those who have not experienced it. Even silence has a structure. Even emptiness can be measured. This was neither. This was the absence of measurement itself. For the first time, I began to consider a possibility I had previously dismissed as illogical. What if the anomaly was not interfering with our sensors? What if it was interfering with reality? The thought should have been impossible.
And yet, impossibility had already established residence in Varnus 9. It was during this phase of analysis that we intercepted the second transmission. It did not originate from human channels. It was Karthik's. That alone was enough to command immediate attention. Karthiks do not broadcast distress. They do not call for aid. They do not communicate weakness. The signal was fragmented, barely coherent. We isolated it across multiple frequency bands, reconstructing it piece by piece, like fragments of a shattered mind. The audio, when finally stabilized, was wrong. Karthik's vocalizations are typically structured, rhythmic, efficient, designed for clarity in combat environments. This was not. This was uneven, erratic. Fear has a sound, even in species that claim not to feel it. Containment failed. Static tore through the signal, distorting the next segment beyond recognition.
Limited endurance, environmental dependency, emotional volatility, a species defined by weakness, and yet repeatedly surviving scenarios where stronger species had failed. It was a pattern I had observed before. Humans do not win through superiority. They win through defiance. They endure where others collapse. They adapt where others resist. And when cornered, they become something else. But even that did not explain Varnus 9, because this was not merely survival. This was transformation. The Karthiks had encountered something within that sector that they could not comprehend, something that bypassed their strength entirely. And the humans were still transmitting, still moving, still present. I began to isolate a new hypothesis, one that I did not include in any official report, because to acknowledge it would be to accept a truth far more dangerous than any enemy fleet. What if the humans were not victims of the anomaly? What if they were part of it? The idea was absurd, illogical, unacceptable. And yet, it persisted, because wherever humans go, the impossible follows. I authorized one final scan, not of the sector itself, but of the space surrounding it. Gravitational drift, subatomic fluctuation, residual echoes of movement. And for the briefest moment, we saw something. A distortion. Not within Varnus 9, but moving outward from it. Expanding. Slowly. Deliberately. Like something learning the shape of the universe, one boundary at a time. We sent a manned observation unit. That decision alone marked the moment we crossed from analysis into involvement. Not soldiers, not warriors. We chose minds over weapons, scientists, analysts, sensory specialists, individuals trained to interpret the unknown, not confront it, because we believed this was still something that could be understood. That was our second mistake. The vessel Ithari Vale entered Sector Varnus 9 without incident. No resistance, no obstruction, no warning.
And that, more than anything, unsettled us. Entry into an active anomaly should produce distortion, gravitational resistance, temporal lag, electromagnetic interference. Instead, it welcomed them. The moment they crossed the threshold, their transmissions began. At first, everything appeared stable. Observation unit reporting, their lead analyst stated, voice calm, measured. Initial entry successful, no immediate hostiles detected. The visuals matched expectations. Darkness, scattered debris fields, fragments of what may have once been structures. Nothing remarkable. Nothing threatening. And yet, within moments, the first inconsistencies emerged. Sensor arrays desynchronizing, another voice reported. Time index mismatch, approximately 0.4 variance. No, increasing. A pause. Correction, variance is no longer linear. Time, as we measure it, began to fracture. Internal clocks disagreed with external readings. Motion tracking lagged behind visual confirmation. Events appeared to occur twice, or not at all. Maintain formation, the lead analyst instructed. Log everything. Do not interpret, only record. That was their protocol. It did not protect them. As they moved deeper into the outpost, the darkness changed. Not in density, in presence. It is difficult to explain even now. Light behaved normally. Instruments registered standard visual ranges, but the observers described something else. It feels... One began, hesitating. Define, the lead responded. Occupied. That word repeated across multiple logs. Not empty, occupied. By what? They could not say. Then they found the first body. The transmission sharpened instantly as their focus shifted. Karthik's entity located, came the report. Position, central corridor, no movement. The visual feed stabilized, and for the first time since entering Varnus 9, we saw something concrete. The corpse lay exactly where it had fallen. Armor intact, no visible damage, no signs of struggle. It looked untouched.
Cause of death, the lead asked. Silence followed as scanners passed over the body. Then confusion. I don't understand, the analyst whispered. Clarify? External structure is fully intact. No breaches, no energy residue, no trauma. A pause. Internal scan is abnormal. The feed shifted to diagnostic imaging, and for the first time in this investigation, I felt something resembling dread. The Karthik's internal systems were destroyed, not damaged, collapsed. Organs had liquefied into unrecognizable masses. Neural pathways, once dense with bioelectric activity, were scorched into inert pathways. It was as though something had reached inside and unmade the organism from within, without ever touching the surface. No known weapon signature matches this, the analyst said, voice tightening. This is not thermal, not kinetic, not biological. Then what is it? Another asked. No one answered, because there was no answer to give. They moved on, deeper, further into the silence that was no longer silent. That was when they found the markings. At first, they were mistaken for structural damage, scratches along metallic surfaces, irregular patterns across the walls. But then one of the observers paused. Zoom in, they said. The feed adjusted, and the scratches resolved into something else. Symbols. Crude. Uneven. But deliberate. Human. They're watching, the analyst whispered. Translate, the lead ordered. The system processed the markings, cross-referencing known human linguistic patterns. The translation appeared moments later. Still alive. The corridor felt narrower after that. They continued scanning. More markings appeared, scattered along the walls like fragments of a broken mind. They're watching. Another. Don't trust the silence. The messages were not strategic, not coordinated. They were warnings, left behind by something that had endured long enough to understand. And fear. Humans survived initial contact, one observer noted. They adapted.
Yes, another replied quietly. But to what? That question lingered longer than it should have, because by then, the observers had begun reporting inconsistencies in their own perceptions. I'm detecting movement, one said suddenly. Location. Peripheral. Sector 3. No. It's gone. Confirm visual. Negative. Nothing there. Moments later, another voice. I heard something. Define. Footsteps. No. Scraping. Inside the walls. Silence followed. No one acknowledged it directly, but the unease spread. Sensors began to flicker more aggressively.
Shadows stretched in ways that did not align with light sources. Distances appeared to shift, subtle but undeniable. The outpost was no longer a structure. It was a maze, and something inside it was moving. "Maintain cohesion," the lead insisted. "We are observers. We do not react. We record." But even as they spoke, their voice had changed. Less certain, less controlled. Then came the scream. It was not sudden. It built. A sharp intake of breath, followed by a sound that tore through the transmission with raw, unfiltered intensity. "Report," the lead demanded. No response. "Report." Then, finally, a voice. Shaking. Not from pain, from realization. The observer stopped, as if struggling to form the words. "They learned from us." Every system in our command chamber froze, because those words carried meaning beyond fear. They implied observation, adaptation, replication. "What learned?" the lead demanded. No answer. Only breathing. Then, static. The feed fractured, visuals collapsing into incoherent fragments. Audio stretched and warped, as though something was pulling the signal apart piece by piece. For a moment, just a moment, we saw something in the distortion. A shape. Not defined. Not stable. But present. Watching. And then, nothing. The transmission ended. Not cut. Not lost. Ended. We attempted re-establishing contact. There was no response. We tracked the Athari Veil's signal. It still existed.
But like everything else within Varnus 9, it returned nothing. We were not supposed to recover anything from Varnus 9. That had become the defining rule of the sector. Nothing enters, nothing leaves, nothing remains. And yet, something did. It began as noise. Fragments buried within corrupted transmission bands, broken packets of data that should have been meaningless, discarded remnants of a system already lost. But we are observers. We do not discard. We reconstruct. Piece by piece, cycle after cycle, we extracted what should not have survived. Human logs, audio, visual, psychological recordings. Incomplete, distorted, but real. And through them, we witnessed the beginning. The first entries were exactly as predicted: orderly, structured, controlled. Squad Theta reporting. Infiltration successful. No immediate detection. The human voices were steady, calculated. They moved with purpose, mapping corridors, tagging structural weak points, identifying Karthik's patrol routes. It was routine, expected. Then came the ambush. The shift was immediate. "Contact, multiple hostiles, fall back." The audio fractured into bursts of movement, weapon discharge, heavy breathing. Visual feeds blurred as the squad retreated through narrowing corridors. "Comms are down." "We're cut off." Repeat, "We are cut off." The Karthiks moved as they always did, fast, precise, overwhelming. Their presence filled every available path, closing escape routes with mechanical inevitability. Standard outcome: total loss. We had seen it countless times. So had the humans. And yet, they did not accept it. The next log should have been their final one. It was not. Instead, there was silence. Not the unnatural silence of Varnus 9. A different kind. Controlled. Deliberate. Then a voice. Quieter now. "We're not getting out the usual way." Another voice responded. Strained but focused. No evac. No reinforcements. A pause. Then, something unexpected. "Good,"
That word lingered. Not fear, not resignation.
Acceptance. And beneath it, something sharper. Then we change the rules. That was the moment everything diverged. The logs that followed were no longer standard military recordings. They were something else. Adaptation in real time. The humans began to study the Karthics, not as enemies to defeat, but as systems to understand. They rely on movement detection, one log noted, primary tracking through thermal and vibration. Then we remove both, another replied. And they did. The humans began shutting down sections of the outpost, cutting power, disabling environmental controls, plunging entire corridors into darkness that even Karthik sensory systems struggled to penetrate. They rerouted energy flows, creating pockets of cold space where thermal signatures vanished. They altered airflow patterns, distorting scent trails. They did not run. They reshaped the battlefield. Sound carries differently in these corridors, one log recorded. Echo delay, 0.8 seconds. Use it. Moments later, we heard it. Footsteps. Not from the humans. From everywhere. The echoes of movement, multiplied, distorted, impossible to track. The Karthics began to respond. Confusion entered their patterns. Patrols split. Search formations broke. They're separating, a human voice whispered. Good. Isolate them. This was not combat. It was disassembly. One by one, the Karthics were pulled apart. Not physically, but tactically. Their strength lay in coordinated aggression. Their weakness was isolation, and the humans exploited it with ruthless precision. Target moving alone, Corridor 7. A pause, then silence, followed by a single, brief sound. Not a weapon discharge. Something else. Wet. Abrupt. Final. The log did not explain. It did not need to. This pattern repeated. Again and again. Karthik's units vanished. No alarms. No alerts. Just absence. And with each disappearance, something shifted. At first, the Karthics responded with increased aggression, faster patrols, tighter formations.
But aggression requires certainty, and certainty was gone. They're hesitating, one human noted. Yeah, another replied quietly. They're starting to feel it. Feel what? The answer came moments later. Fear. It was subtle at first. Delays in movement, irregular patrol timing, increased scanning intervals. Then it escalated. They're not advancing, a human voice observed. They're waiting. Waiting for something they could not see, something they could not understand. The predators had begun to question the darkness. And in that hesitation, they lost. Because hesitation, in war, is death. But that was not the most disturbing part. Not even close. Because as the logs continued, the humans changed. It was gradual, almost imperceptible. At first, their voices carried strain, fatigue, tension, the constant pressure of survival. Then, those elements faded. Not completely, but enough to be noticeable. They stopped reacting to the environment and started controlling it. They're adapting slower now, one human said. No, another corrected. They're learning. A pause. From us. The implication should have been impossible. The Karthics were not adaptive in that sense. They did not learn through observation. They relied on instinct, on pre-coded evolutionary responses. And yet, something was shifting. They're avoiding certain corridors, a voice noted. The ones we used before. Another pause. They remember. Silence followed that realization, because memory implies something more than instinct. It implies understanding. And then came the final set of logs. The tone had changed completely. No urgency, no fear, only focus.
We're not being hunted anymore. Then what are we? A long pause. Then the answer. We're the ones they're afraid of. That should have been a victory statement. It was not. Because beneath it, something else had emerged. Something colder, more distant, less human. We've been here too long, one voice said. No one responded.
Because they all understood. The environment was changing them. Not physically, something deeper. They're not the only ones learning, another voice added. And for the first time, there was uncertainty. Not about survival, but about themselves. The final recording was the shortest. A single voice, calm, unfamiliar. We set the trap. A pause. They're coming. Another pause. Longer this time. And then, so is it. The transmission ended there. The Karthik's logs arrived slowly. Fragments, corrupted by their own failing systems, but readable enough to paint a story of horror from the predator's perspective. At first, the entries were condescending, routine, dismissive. Humans are inconsequential, one log recorded. Fragile, inefficient, easily predicted. Small, weak, predictable, easy prey. The Karthiks monitored their progress as one would watch insects crawling across a floor. Their confidence was absolute. They did not consider humans capable of strategy, innovation, or survival beyond instinct. Then, it began. The first patrol disappeared. Not killed in combat, not ensnared in traps, just gone. No sensor records, no energy spikes, no distress signals, only absence. At first, the Karthiks believed it an anomaly, a fluke of the labyrinthine corridors of Varnus 9. They dispatched another patrol. Same result. Then another, and another. Entire units vanished within hours. No logs, no reports, no evidence of engagement. Just silence, where once movement had existed. We watched as the predator's confidence unraveled within the logs. Protocols, once rigid and absolute, began to fray. Commands became hesitant. Instructions repeated and contradicted themselves. They began to seal sections of the base, locking doors, rerouting patrols, restricting internal movement. They are hiding, one log stated plainly. Not attacking, not defending, hiding. The apex predator had become prey. And in the recordings, human voices occasionally filtered through.
Echoes, faint and indirect, as if the humans were observing, calculating, manipulating the environment to their advantage. They are hunting them, I whispered to no one. One log captured the last moments of a Karthik's commander. Internal breaches detected. Movement irregular. We cannot predict. They are inside the walls. I can hear them. The breathing in the recording was heavy, uneven. Panic creeping into the cadence of speech, breaking the rigid discipline of a species that does not feel fear. Then came the whisper, almost indistinguishable from static. They are not afraid anymore. And that was it. Silence. Complete. Permanent. The logs ended abruptly. No further recordings, no last transmissions. Only the void of Varnus 9, recorded as empty space in our long-range scans, but alive in ways our instruments could not measure. We realized then that the humans had passed a threshold the Karthiks could not comprehend. It was no longer survival, no longer adaptation. It was mastery. They had become predators in a domain where none had dared tread. And the apex hunters had learned something they could not survive knowing. In the corridors, in the shadows, within the very walls of Varnus 9,
A new rule had been established. Humans were no longer prey. They were the reckoning. And whatever came next, even the Karthiks could not withstand it. We believed the humans caused it all. At first, that assumption seemed reasonable. After all, they were in the sector. They had survived impossible odds. They had turned hunters into prey, predators into ghosts of themselves. From every angle, it appeared that the humans had rewritten the rules of the engagement entirely on their own. But we were wrong. Deep beneath the shattered outpost, where the Karthiks patrols had vanished and the humans had carved their paths of survival, our observers, what remained of them, found something older. Not Karthiks, not human. Something beyond the comprehension of either species.
It was a structure, immense, buried deep within the planetary crust. Its architecture defied logic, angular, organic, and yet impossibly precise. It appeared to have grown with the rock, integrated into the world itself. Its surface was etched with geometries that shimmered faintly, imperceptible except under certain subspace frequencies. Ancient, dormant, waiting. The humans had found it first. We have no record of what drew them there. Perhaps instinct, perhaps desperation, perhaps the same curiosity that had defined their species for millennia. Whatever the reason, they activated it, and when they did, the rules of Varnus 9 shifted. We do not know how they activated it, nor why. We only know the result. The darkness of the sector, the unnatural black that had swallowed sensors and probes, was no longer a void. It was filled with awareness, a presence, a thinking absence. The silence that had confounded our observation was no longer empty. Something had awakened, and it was learning. First, from the Karthiks, the remnants of their structures, the patterns of their patrols, their instincts, their weaknesses. It consumed their strategies, absorbed their aggression, rewired the concept of hunting itself. Then, from the humans, the marks they left on the walls, their adaptive strategies, their manipulation of light, sound, and environment. Every decision, every movement, every pattern of survival became data for something vast and unknowable. It was not intelligent in a way we could define, not yet. It did not reason, plan, or strategize like a Karthik's commander. It processed, adapted, evolved, and it spread. The walls of the outpost, once solid and reliable, became conduits for something else. Shadows shifted independently of light. Corridors rearranged themselves subtly. Sensors recorded anomalies impossible to quantify. Temperature inversions, subatomic displacement, time dilation in pockets of space that should not have been affected. The humans moved through it as if they understood its rhythm, as if they could negotiate with its presence. And yet, we, the observers, recognized the truth almost too late. It was not responding to them. It was learning from them, evolving with them, becoming something that neither predator nor prey could anticipate. The Karthiks had been reduced to ghosts by fear and adaptation. This entity, this structure, had been reduced by neither. It was neither passive nor active. It existed in cycles beyond comprehension, a growing intelligence embedded in stone, in corridors, in the very bones of the planet itself. And it was not bound to the humans. It was bound to survival itself. Everything the humans had done, every tactical advantage, every mark left behind, had become part of it. It was learning at a speed that defied reason, and it would continue to learn, from the Karthiks, from the humans, from the environment, from the very laws of physics that govern the sector. It was not a weapon. It was not a tool. It was a new life form, and it had been waiting for something capable of activating it, something capable of teaching it, something capable of surviving in its presence.
The humans had done both, and in doing so, they had awakened more than themselves, more than the Karthiks, more than the sector. They had awakened a predator that no species, no army, no observer could anticipate. And the question we recorded in the final transmissions before all systems went dark remained unanswered. What happens when the hunter learns faster than the prey, and the prey teaches it to hunt beyond reason? We do not know. We only know that Varnus 9 will never be empty again. The last transmission arrived just hours before the system went dark. Not an error, not a glitch, not a corrupted data stream. Human. The voice was calm, steady, precise. We contained it, for now. I replayed the fragment dozens of times. Every time the phrase carried the same weight. Not relief, not panic.
Not arrogance. Containment implied control, but this was Varnus 9. Nothing here could be controlled. Not by us, not by the Karthiks, not by anyone or anything we had ever known. The background noise was subtle at first, metal groaning under stress, echoing in corridors that should have been silent. Footsteps, distant movement, something scraping across surfaces in a rhythm that seemed deliberate, yet impossible to track. But it learns fast, too fast. The calm voice persisted. It described an entity that was no longer just reactive, not just adaptive. It was accelerating beyond human comprehension, learning at a speed that defied even our theoretical models. A pause, then the warning. If this reaches anyone, do not come here. No hesitation, no uncertainty, no fear in the cadence, only a message, clear and unwavering. Avoid this sector. Turn away. Do not interfere. Then, quieter, almost beneath the ambient noise. We're not leaving. Someone has to hold the line. Another voice joined, faint but resolute, human, determined. Tell them, we fought. Fought, not survived, not endured, not escaped, fought. The transmission continued for mere seconds longer, a strange rhythm of human breath, movement, and unbroken resolve. There was no screaming, no despair, no surrender. A single sound concluded the message. Not a scream, not an explosion, not even a weapon discharge. It was a declaration. Resolve. Steely, unshakable. Even across the void of space, even through layers of interference, even through the cold instruments of our observation fleet, we felt it. Humans do not yield. Not when cornered, not when facing impossible odds. And in that final transmission, they were more than alive. They were a statement. They had survived the unthinkable. They had confronted what should have destroyed them, and they had chosen to stay. Not for themselves, not for glory, for something greater, for the line they held. The recording ended.
Silence returned to the system, but the weight of what we heard remained. Even after the last signal faded, the presence lingered. Varnus 9 was no longer just a lost sector. It was a warning, a testament, a human line drawn in the darkness of the universe. We sealed Varnus 9, not partially, not symbolically, completely. No ship may enter within 10 light cycles. No probe, no observation array, no signal of any kind may escape its borders. Officially, the system does not exist. Its star is a ghost, its planets, phantoms. Varnus 9 has been erased from charts, logs, and memory. But we remember. We remember what happened there. Not because of the entity we discovered beneath the planet, ancient and adaptive, learning at a rate that defies comprehension. Not because of the Karthiks, apex predators humbled, reduced to ghosts of themselves. Not even because of the darkness that warped instruments, flickered time, and twisted perception. We remember because of the humans.
They were never the strongest. Their muscles did not outperform the Carthics. Their reflexes did not match synthetic war machines. Their technology was primitive in comparison to fleets capable of obliterating planets. Yet when confronted with extinction, they did not surrender. They adapted, rapidly, elegantly, brutally. They learned the rules of a battlefield that should have annihilated them. They weaponized fear, manipulated space, and exploited the weaknesses of the apex predators that hunted them. They endured. Time and again, when every logical calculation predicted failure, they persisted. They improvised, observing, learning, and becoming something the universe had not expected. And they fought. Not for glory, not for conquest, not even for survival in the narrowest sense. They fought to buy time, for themselves, for their squad, for something beyond immediate understanding. They fought so that something else could live. And that is why we fear them. Because humans are not defined by their strength.
Not by their speed, not by their technology. They are defined by their persistence, by their ingenuity under pressure, by their unyielding refusal to vanish when all odds are stacked against them. If such a species ever turns its full attention outward, if they decide that survival is no longer enough, and that mastery of their environment is the goal, there will be nothing in this universe capable of stopping them. We, the observers, have watched. We have documented. We have analyzed.